I'm a man in my early 50s who has been married for well over a decade. My wife and I have two children, and until relatively recently, I genuinely believed we had built a great family and a good life together. I own a business that was extremely successful for many years, but last year it was hit hard by circumstances completely outside my control. For the first time in a long time, I found myself seriously worried about money and our family's financial future. My instinct was to go into survival mode, cut unnecessary expenses, protect the business, keep paying our obligations, and try to preserve as much stability as possible for our children. My wife seemed to react to the situation very differently. Instead of becoming more conservative financially, she continued going out drinking several nights a week, sometimes spending a considerable amount each time. Her drinking also became concerning because there were nights when she drank so much that she couldn't remember portions of the evening. At the same time, she became increasingly focused on traveling and having new experiences. While I was looking at our finances and thinking that this wasn't the time for expensive trips, she continued traveling without the entire family. One of our children was actually upset about this long before she knew anything about the problems in our marriage. She couldn't understand why her mother was taking trips while we were not traveling together as a family, and at one point, she told me that she thought her mother was being selfish. At the time, I tried not to make much of it because I didn't want our children involved in disagreements between their parents. What our child didn't know was that there was much more happening behind the scenes. I eventually discovered that my wife was having an affair with a man who lived some distance away. I also learned that some of the travel I had been uncomfortable with involved seeing him. One detail has been particularly difficult for me to process as a father. One of our children was unknowingly present during circumstances surrounding the beginning of the affair. She had no idea what was happening, but knowing that our child was anywhere near that situation has made the betrayal considerably harder for me to compartmentalize as something that happened strictly between my wife and me. After discovering everything, I still wasn't immediately ready to end the marriage. We had spent many years together. We had children, and despite how hurt I was, part of me desperately wanted to believe that our family could survive this. We therefore agreed to make one final attempt at reconciliation. The expectations were not particularly complicated. The outside relationship had to end. The partying needed to slow down. There needed to be honesty and transparency, and both of us needed to genuinely behave as though we were trying to save our marriage. Within a very short period of time, that agreement was broken. The other man came to our city, and my wife chose to see him again. They went out together and resumed their sexual relationship, despite her knowing that doing so would very likely end our marriage. That particular decision changed something in me. The original affair was devastating, but I could at least entertain the possibility that people make terrible decisions, become caught up in something, regret it, and change. What became much harder for me to understand was making the same choice after everything had been discovered, and after we had explicitly agreed to try to repair our marriage. My wife has since acknowledged that she has behaved selfishly. She has also been fairly open about wanting sexual experiences outside of a traditional monogamous relationship. She has talked about wanting experiences with other men and couples. I don't want that kind of marriage. I'm not morally opposed to consenting adults choosing non-monogamy if that's genuinely what both people want. It's simply not what I want for myself. I want a monogamous relationship in which both people see marriage as a partnership and make major decisions about money, travel, children, and their future together. Over time, I've started to realize that our problems may go considerably deeper than infidelity. I'm beginning to believe that my wife and I have developed fundamentally different values regarding marriage, finances, and family responsibilities. Then the situation became even more painful because one of our children overheard conversations about the affair. She started asking questions, and eventually, my wife admitted to her that she had cheated on me. Our child became extremely angry with her mother and said some very painful things to her. What disturbed me was that during their conversation, my wife apparently tried to explain what happened by saying that she hadn't been getting enough attention from me and wasn't happy with how I had treated her. That made me furious. I'm willing to acknowledge that I wasn't a perfect husband. I'm sure there were moments when I was distracted by work, financial stress, or other problems, and there are undoubtedly things I could have done differently in our marriage. But I strongly believe that those are separate issues from the decision to cheat. If someone is deeply unhappy in a marriage, there are many possible responses. Communicate honestly, insist on counseling, demand changes, separate, or ultimately file for divorce. Having an affair is still a decision made by the person having it. More importantly, I don't think our child should ever have been placed in the position of trying to determine whether her father's shortcomings somehow explain her mother's infidelity. That's an adult conflict that she should never have been asked to carry. At this point, we've decided to divorce. The problem is that divorce doesn't instantly untangle two lives that have been connected for so many years. My wife isn't currently in a financial position where she can easily establish another household, which means we're temporarily continuing to live under the same roof while we work through the separation. That situation is emotionally much harder than I expected. To make things even more complicated, we're still having sex regularly. Our physical relationship has always been very good, and despite everything that has happened, that connection hasn't simply disappeared. Meanwhile, she's continuing to spend time with the other man. That creates an emotional situation that I know probably sounds completely irrational from the outside. I can be intimate with my wife one day and then know she's spending time with him another night. Rationally, I understand that we're divorcing. Eventually, what she does romantically or sexually will be entirely her business, just as my future relationships will be mine. Emotionally, I'm nowhere near that point yet. I've never considered myself a particularly jealous person. For most of my marriage, jealousy wasn't something I struggled with. After discovering the affairs and the lying, however, I've found myself experiencing feelings that are completely unfamiliar to me. Some nights I'm jealous, other nights I'm devastated. Increasingly, I'm also angry enough that I sometimes feel something approaching hatred towards someone I spent many years loving. I'm angry about being lied to. I'm angry about what happened to our family. I'm angry that our child is now carrying knowledge about her parents' marriage that I wish she had never been exposed to. I'm angry when I think about the period when I was desperately trying to keep our financial life together while my wife was traveling, partying, and pursuing another part of her life that I didn't fully understand. At the same time, I don't want to hate her. Whatever happened between us, she's still the mother of my children. We will be connected through them for the rest of our lives, and I don't want the end of our marriage to become the beginning of decades of hostility. I don't want an ugly divorce where lawyers burn through money while two hurt people try to punish each other. I don't want our children feeling that they must choose sides. I don't want them worrying about whether mom and dad can both attend the same soccer game, graduation, birthday, wedding, or future family event without creating tension. I'd like to believe that eventually we can become decent co-parents, even if we're never friends again. I'm also starting to recognize that continuing to live together, and particularly continuing to have sex, may be preventing me from emotionally separating from her. Every moment of intimacy creates a feeling of connection, and then knowing she's with someone else brings the reality of the divorce crashing back down again. There's still a part of me that loves the woman I married. There's another part of me that is incredibly angry at the person I feel she became. Part of me is ready to build a completely different life, while another part would give almost anything to go back in time to when I believed our family was secure. I know that isn't possible. So I'm interested in hearing from people who have actually lived through betrayal, divorce, and co-parenting, rather than simply hearing that I should move on. If financial circumstances forced you to remain under the same roof temporarily, how did you create enough emotional separation to begin healing without turning the house into a hostile environment? And probably the most important question for me, how did you allow yourself to be legitimately angry about what happened without letting that anger eventually turn into hatred for someone you still must raise children with? Well, in my opinion, you already know the answer, man. You wrote it yourself at the bottom of your post. You're not going to get over her while you're still sleeping with her. It's not going to happen. And look, I get it. She's right down the hall, and that part of the marriage was never the problem. But every time it happens, you're back in it. And 2 nights later, she's out with this guy, and you're tore up all over again. At some point, that's you doing it to yourself. Separate bedrooms as soon as possible. And whatever it takes to get her into her own place, pay it. Best money you'll ever spend. The part that got me was the daughter. Your wife gets caught, and her move is to blame you to your kid. That would have ended it for me right there. So be mad. You earned it. Just don't let it turn into hate, because those kids are watching what their dad does next. To my audience, this is one of the reasons I do not cover Reddit stories. I will have to wait for an update for this because I have a feeling it's coming. And another thing, not every man will process betrayal the same. Not every man will have a backbone or find his balls right away. He may at some point, but you will hear this in a lot of stories on Reddit. Let's hope this guy finds his. See you in the next one.